As we go into prayer, right before we go into prayer, I just wanted to recap where we left off in the teaching this morning. Remember, we were going through this parable in Ezekiel chapter 16. And here in verse 28, this is God speaking through the prophet to the nation of Israel. And this is his judgment of their faith and their walk with the Lord. He says in verse 28, "Moreover, you played the harlot with the Assyrians because you were not satisfied. And then when you played the harlot with the Assyrians, you still were not satisfied. You also multiplied your harlotry with the land of merchants, Chaldea, yet even with this you were not satisfied. How languishing is your heart? How exhausted, how feeble, how empty is your heart?" This, I think, is one of the great purposes of prayer that we often don't think about or talk about. But I think it's probably number one. Prayer resets your heart upon God. Where so many times we become distracted with the things of this world, the cares of this world, the busy schedule. Prayer is the reset button. It's the reboot, where once again we focus and settle our faith entirely upon Him, and He alone brings the satisfaction. How tragic it is when we go from thing to thing, but we're never satisfied. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 11, when he says, "Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done." Earlier, verses 1 through 10 in this chapter, he talks about, I tried this, and I tried that, and I went after this, and I experienced that. And he said, I considered all of these activities and all of the labor that I had exerted pursuing all these other things, trying to find some satisfaction, trying to find some peace, some fulfillment. And he says what? Oh, it all left me empty. That's what vanity means. It means emptiness, a void. Everything left me empty. It was like striving after wind, and we talked a little bit about the futility of trying to catch wind. You can't catch it. Every time you reach out and try to grab it, it's gone. There's nothing there. And that is what pursuing after anything other than God leaves us with. Nothing. And we're empty, and we're frustrated, and our heart is languishing. And when will we learn that only God can satisfy? And I want to tell you something. Once you find your satisfaction in God through prayer, it breaks the power of temptation over your life. Temptation loses its enticement. When you come to God and spend time in prayer before His throne and really drink deep of the Spirit of God and really drink deep of His salvation and His Word and His presence, and you hear His voice, you are changed. And all of those other things you used to chase after, the enticement is broken. The power over you is broken because you're satisfied with what truly brings fulfillment and purpose and peace. We talked this morning from Matthew 22, verse 37, where Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart." And we asked, do you really love Him with all of your heart? That heart, cardia, means it talks about the very center of your life. Does that describe you? Has your love for God consumed your heart? Is He all that you think about, all that you desire throughout the day? Is it something where you don't have to make your mind think about Him? Your heart rejoices to meditate upon Him throughout the day. With all of your soul, your emotions, your affections. Are you in love with God? Is God the greatest thrill of your life? With all of your mind, you keep your mind focused. You set your mind on things above. Jesus said this is the great and foremost commandment. This commandment has to be obeyed above all else, is what He's saying. Do you really love the Lord your God? And we've talked about the tragedy in Revelation chapter 2 when Jesus talks to the church in Ephesus. And He says, I know your deeds and your toil and your perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil men, and you put to test those who call themselves apostles, but you have found them to be false, and you have perseverance, and you've endured, and you've not grown weary, but I had this one thing against you, that you have left your first love. And it reminds us of what a marriage can become if we're not careful. You can be going through all of the motions of marriage, but the love dies. The communion dies. The intimacy dies. How tragic is that? And that's what religion is. Religion is going through the motions without the relationship. And your love has gone. The love can always be rekindled. And if your love needs to be rekindled tonight, it can be rekindled this very hour. That's what prayer is for. Prayer is for you to connect with God, to engage His Spirit, to commune with Him in a holy intimacy, and you will be so filled and refreshed and strengthened, and the power of sin will lose its grip because you are satisfied. You need no other. He says, therefore remember from where you have fallen and repent, and do the deeds you did at first, or else I'm coming to you and will remove your lampstand out of its place unless you repent. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. Fall deeply in love with Him. Seek after His voice and His word in this time of prayer like your life depends on it, because it's not only your life, it's your eternity that depends upon it. Look at these passages here in Psalm 65, verse 4. How blessed is the one whom you choose and bring near to you to dwell in your courts. You know why Jesus came? Jesus came because you were chosen to come and dwell in His courts. Jesus coming and purchasing you with His blood purchased your entrance to abide in the Holy of Holies. And watch what happens. We will be satisfied with the goodness of your house, your holy temple. Nothing brings life and joy and purpose and meaning and hope like being in God's presence. Psalm 16, verse 11, you will make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy, and in your right hand there are pleasures forevermore. And once you taste of His pleasures at the throne of God, the so-called pleasures of this life that try to entice you, you see them for what they are: empty traps, empty deceits, empty schemes of the devil to entrap and addict you, because you'll never find satisfaction. But what sweet satisfaction and peace you find in the presence of God. And when things are going well for you, you rejoice in His goodness and you rejoice in His presence and you're content. Or whether things are going bad for you circumstantially, you have the peace to stay in the presence of God and to trust Him regardless of how bad things get. Remember Paul in Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. He says, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. So that tells us something. Contentment does not come natural. Contentment must be learned. And you learn contentment by being in His presence. So really the first priority tonight as we go to prayer, learn how to be content in His presence. Learn how to draw from His Spirit. Learn how to allow His Word to satisfy you. Learn how to hear that still small voice that will change your heart forever. You'll never be happier. You'll never have more joy and peace than in His presence.